The metal gate didn't just lock. It slammed shut like the jaws of a beast. Nia froze, her hand hovering over the keypad. The red light on the digital lock blinked once. Twice. Access denied. She wasn't just fired. She was trapped. Behind her, the gravel crunched. Slow. Deliberate. The sound of expensive leather shoes walking on wet stone. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The air had already changed, it felt heavier, colder, charged with the scent of ozone and expensive cologne. You signed the paper, Nia. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. It was the kind of voice that made grown men tremble. Low, textured, and terrifyingly calm. Clause 4, he whispered, right against the shell of her ear, his breath ghosting over her skin. Nobody leaves. 3 days earlier. Nia stared at her bank account balance on her cracked phone screen. Negative. The red numbers seemed to mock her, glowing in the dim light of the street lamp. New message from Dad, they came to the shop again. Please, Nia. I don't know what to do. Her grip on the phone tightened until her knuckles turned the color of ash. She was 23 years old, standing in the middle of Gangnam, surrounded by neon lights and happy couples, feeling like she was drowning. The debt wasn't hers, but the consequences were. If she didn't come up with 50 million won by the end of the month, her father wouldn't just lose the shop. He would lose his life. That was when the black sedan pulled up. It wasn't a taxi. It was a phantom. Sleek, matte black, with tinted windows so dark they looked like voids absorbing the city light. The back window slid down an inch. Just enough for a car to slide out. A woman in the front seat, sharp-faced and wearing a suit that cost more than Nia's entire tuition, didn't even look at her. We heard you need work, the woman said. Her Korean was clipped, formal, devoid of warmth. The master needs a cleaner. Night shift. No questions asked. She extended the card. It was black with gold edges. No name. Just an address in the Pyeongchangdong Hills. The Beverly Hills of Seoul. The pay? Nia asked, her voice trembling against the traffic noise. Enough to erase your problems. Nia took the card. The paper felt heavy, like it was woven with gold thread. She didn't ask who the master was. She couldn't afford to care. The house was a fortress. It sat on top of the hill, isolated from the rest of the city by a forest of pine trees. Inside, it was a museum of cold luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows, black marble floors that reflected Nia's terrified face, and silence. A silence so deep it hurt her ears. Mrs. Choi, the head housekeeper, walked fast. Nia practically had to run to keep up. You are here to clean, Mrs. Choi said, her heels clicking like gunshots on the marble. Not to look. Not to speak. You are a ghost. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am, Nia whispered. Mrs. Choi stopped abruptly in front of a massive set of double doors. They were carved with intricate dragons, their eyes inlaid with mother-of-pearl that shimmered in the low light. Rule number 1, Mrs. Choi said, turning to face her. Her eyes were hard. This is the West Wing. The master's private quarters. She leaned in close. You never enter this wing while he is home. You never clean it unless I tell you he has left the country. And if, by some accident, you see him. Mrs. Choi paused. The silence in the hallway stretched thin, vibrating with tension. You look at the floor, Mrs. Choi hissed. You do not make eye contact. You do not speak to him. You do not look at his skin. If you break this rule, I cannot save you. Do you understand? Nia swallowed the lump in her throat. Who is he? Mrs. Choi's face went pale. He is the man who owns this city. That is all you need to know. Sign here. Nia signed. She thought she was signing an employment contract. She didn't know she was signing a death warrant. It was 2 a.m. The mansion was asleep. Or so Nia thought. She was on her knees in the main hallway, polishing the baseboards. Her arms ached. Her knees were bruised. But she kept scrubbing. Every hour of this meant her father lived another day. Suddenly, a loud crash of glass breaking echoed through the hall. A muffled, pained groan followed. Nia froze. The sound came from behind the double doors. The West Wing. He isn't home, Nia told herself, her heart skipping a beat. Mrs. Choi said he was in Tokyo. Another sound. A heavy thud, like a body hitting the floor. Panic flared in Nia's chest. What if someone was hurt? What if it was a thief? If she didn't check, and something happened to the master, she would be blamed. She would be fired. She stood up, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She wiped her hands on her apron and crept toward the dragon doors. She pushed the door open just a crack. The room inside was dark, lit only by the city lights filtering through the rain-streaked windows. The air smelled of metallic iron and whiskey. Nia stepped inside. "Hello?" she whispered. No answer. Just ragged breathing. She took another step. Her eyes adjusted to the gloom. She saw a broken whiskey bottle on the floor. And then, she saw him. He was sitting on a black leather sofa, his head thrown back, his eyes closed. And he was shirtless. Nia gasped. She tried to look away, to obey the rule, but she couldn't. Kang Joon-Woo was beautiful. Terrifyingly, lethally beautiful. His skin was pale moonlight against the darkness of the room. He was built like a fighter, lean muscle, broad shoulders, a chest that rose and fell with pained breaths. But it wasn't his muscles that stopped her heart. It was the ink. A massive, intricate dragon tattoo coiled around his left arm, its claws digging into his pectoral muscle, its scales fading into the shadows of his ribs. The ink was so detailed it looked alive, breathing with him. It wound up his neck, the dragon's tail disappearing behind his ear. He was bleeding. A dark stain was spreading across the white bandage on his side. Nia's instinct as a caretaker took over. She forgot the rules. She forgot Mrs. Choi. She rushed forward. "Sir," she said, her voice shaking. "You're hurt." She reached out. Her hand hovered over his shoulder. His eyes snapped open. They weren't human eyes. They were cold, empty voids. A predator waking up. Before Nia could blink, his hand shot out. He didn't just grab her, he snatched her wrist with a grip of steel. He yanked her down. Nia stumbled, falling to her knees between his legs. Her face was inches from his. She could feel the heat radiating off his bare chest. She could smell the danger on him, blood, rain, and expensive scotch. He didn't let go. His tattooed fingers dug into her soft skin, the contrast of his pale hand against her dark arm visually striking in the dim light. He tilted his head, his eyes traveling over her face. He didn't look angry. He looked hungry. "You," he whispered, his voice rough with pain. "Who let a mouse into the lion's den?" Nia couldn't breathe. The air in the room felt suddenly thin, sucked away by the man looming over her. His grip on her wrist wasn't painful, but it was absolute. It was the grip of a man who never had to ask for anything because he simply took it. "I asked you a question," he said, his voice dropping an octave, vibrating through her chest. "Who are you?" "Nia," she whispered, her voice trembling so hard the name barely made it past her lips. "I'm the new cleaner. Mrs. Choi, she didn't say you were here." Joon-Woo didn't release her. Instead, he pulled her closer. Just an inch. Enough for her to see the flecks of gold in his obsidian eyes. Enough for her to see the way the dragon tattoo on his chest seemed to ripple as he breathed. The ink was mesmerizing, terrifying art, a beast clawing its way out of his skin. Nia, he tested the name, rolling it around his mouth like a sip of expensive wine. You're trembling, Nia. Are you afraid of me? She should have lied. She should have looked down. But she was paralyzed by the intensity of his gaze. Yes. For a second, something flickered in his expression. Amusement? Intrigue? It was gone too fast to tell. He finally released her wrist, pushing her back slightly. The loss of his touch left a cold phantom sensation on her skin. Good, he muttered, leaning back against the sofa and closing his eyes, dismissing her as if she were nothing more than a piece of furniture. Fear keeps you alive. Get me the first aid kit from the bathroom. And if you drop anything, don't bother coming back. Nia scrambled backward, her legs feeling like jelly. She rushed to the bathroom, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped the bottle of antiseptic. When she returned, he was watching her again. He didn't speak as she cleaned the wound on his side. She worked in terrified silence, trying desperately not to look at the hard planes of his stomach or the ink that swirled down his hip bone. When she finished, she fled. She didn't walk, she ran. She ran until she reached the servants' quarters in the basement, locking the door behind her and sliding down against it, gasping for air. She touched her wrist where he had held her. It still felt hot. The morning sun brought no warmth to the mansion. It only made the shadows look longer, sharper. Nia didn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him. The blood. The tattoos. The look in his eyes that said he owned everything he saw. She was in the kitchen, staring blankly at a cup of coffee, when the television mounted in the corner flashed a breaking news report. Gang warfare escalates in Seoul. Police connect the recent violence to the Golden Dragon Syndicate. Authorities are searching for the elusive head of the family, known only as the Dragon. The screen flashed a grainy, blurry photo taken from a security camera years ago. It was a younger man, but the eyes were unmistakable. Cold. Empty. Nia dropped her coffee mug. It shattered on the floor, sending ceramic shards skittering across the tiles. Golden Dragon. The tattoos. The wound. The secrecy. She wasn't working for a rich businessman. She was working for a warlord. A killer. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She couldn't stay here. The debt didn't matter anymore. If she stayed, she wouldn't just be poor, she would be collateral damage. She would be dead. She didn't clean up the broken mug. She turned and ran to her room. She grabbed her duffel bag, stuffing her few clothes inside with frantic, clumsy hands. Her passport. Her phone. That was all she needed. She threw the hood of her raincoat up and stepped out into the hallway. The house was silent. Mrs. Choi was in the laundry room. The guards were patrolling the perimeter. If she was fast, she could make it to the side gate. She moved like a shadow, hugging the walls, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Left turn. Down the corridor. The heavy steel door. She reached the side exit. It was a heavy, electronic gate designed to keep intruders out. But right now, it was keeping her in. She punched in the servant code Mrs. Choi had given her. Beep. 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 A red light flashed. Access denied. Nia frowned. She tried again. Her fingers were slippery with sweat. Beep. 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 Access denied. No, she whispered, panic rising in her throat like bile. No, no, please. She tried the main gate code. Denied. She tried the delivery code. Denied. The keypad screen went blank. Then, a single word flashed in bright red letters, lockdown. A mechanical whirring sound echoed around her. Metal shutters began to descend over the windows of the mansion, one by one, sealing out the daylight. The house was closing itself up. Going somewhere? The voice came from the top of the grand staircase behind her. It was smooth, calm, and terrifyingly amused. Nia spun around, her back hitting the cold metal of the locked door. Joon-Woo stood on the landing. He was fully dressed now, wearing a charcoal suit that was tailored to perfection. He looked like a king surveying his kingdom. But the top of his collar was unbuttoned, just enough to reveal the black ink of the dragon's tail curling up his neck. He held a small remote in his hand. Nia stammered, clutching her bag to her chest like a shield. I have a family emergency. I have to go. Joon-Woo descended the stairs slowly. 1 step. 2 steps. He moved with the grace of a panther stalking a wounded deer. You're a terrible liar, Nia, he said softly. He stopped at the bottom of the stairs, 10 feet away from her. The distance felt like nothing. The codes don't work, she said, her voice gaining a desperate edge. Open the door. Please. I quit. I won't tell anyone what I saw. I swear. Joon-Woo tilted his head. You quit. He laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was dark and dry. You didn't read the contract, did you? He took a step closer. Nia shrank back, but there was nowhere to go. Clause 4, he recited from memory, his eyes locking onto hers. Employment is terminated only at the master's discretion. Unauthorized departure is considered a breach of confidentiality. He was standing right in front of her now. He reached out, not to touch her, but to brace his hand against the door next to her head, boxing her in. He smelled of rain and danger. Breach of contract means you owe me, Nia, he whispered, leaning down until his lips were inches from her ear. And since you cannot pay with money, you will pay with time. Nia trembled. What do you want from me? Joon-Woo pulled back to look at her face. His gaze dropped to her mouth, then back up to her wide, terrified eyes. The hunger she had seen last night was back, but now it was mixed with something darker. Possessiveness. Everything, he said. He pressed a button on the remote. Welcome home, Nia. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Nia watched as Joon-Woo lowered the remote, the metal shutters now fully sealing the mansion from the outside world. The only light came from the crystal chandelier above them, casting long, distorted shadows against the walls. She expected him to drag her to a basement. She expected a cell. She expected shackles. Instead, he extended a hand. His palm was open, his long fingers pale and steady. Your phone, he said softly. Nia clutched her bag tighter to her chest. Why? Because in my house, we do not have distractions. And you, Nia, you are going to need to focus. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't move to take it by force. He just waited. The silence stretched between them, louder than any shout. Nia realized with a sinking heart that this man didn't use force because he didn't have to. His will was the law of this place. Trembling, she reached into her bag. Her fingers brushed against the cool glass of her screen, her only link to her father, to the outside world. She pulled it out and placed it in his hand. Good, he said, sliding the device into his suit pocket without even looking at it. Follow me. He turned and walked back up the grand staircase. He didn't look back to see if she was following. He knew she was. Where else could she go? Nia followed him up the marble steps, her legs feeling like lead. They passed the forbidden west wing doors and moved down the east hallway. He stopped in front of a white door and pushed it open. This is your room, he said. Nia stepped inside and gasped. It wasn't a servant's room. It was a suite. A king-sized bed with silk sheets, a vanity made of white oak, and a walk-in closet filled with clothes. It smelled of lavender and money. But as Nia walked further in, she saw the truth. The windows. They were floor-to-ceiling glass, offering a stunning view of the rainy Seoul skyline. But when she touched the glass, it was thick, cold, and unyielding. Reinforced. Bulletproof. And there were no handles. "It's a gilded cage," she whispered, turning to face him. Joon-Woo leaned against the doorframe, watching her reaction with unreadable eyes. "It is a safe haven. As long as you remain obedient, you will have every comfort. You will eat well. You will sleep well. You will be safe. And if I'm not obedient?" Nia asked, her voice shaking. Joon-Woo's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. He reached out and touched the lock on the door. "Then you will learn that there are worse things than being locked in a golden room," he said. "Dinner is at 8. Do not be late." He closed the door. The lock clicked. Nia ran to it, twisting the handle. Locked. She slumped against the wood, sliding down to the floor as the tears finally came. She was a prisoner in a palace. The next 24 hours were a blur of silence. Nia didn't sleep. She paced the room, touching the silk dresses in the closet that weren't hers, staring out at the city that felt a million miles away. Food was brought to her door on a tray by a terrified young maid who refused to make eye contact or speak. Then, at 7 p.m. the next evening, the lock clicked open. It wasn't the maid. It was Mrs. Choi. The head housekeeper looked paler than usual, her lips pressed into a thin line. She carried a garment bag. "Get up," Mrs. Choi said, her voice sharp but laced with anxiety. "The master has requested your presence." Nia stood up from the window seat. "Am I cleaning?" "No," Mrs. Choi said, unzipping the bag. "You are serving." She pulled out a dress. It wasn't a maid's uniform. It was a sleek, red silk dress. It was modest, with long sleeves and a high neck, but the fabric was fluid, designed to cling to the body. It looked like something a mistress would wear to a gala. "He wants me to wear that?" Nia asked. "He wants you to look like you belong to the house," Mrs. Choi said, shoving the dress into Nia's arms. "Do not ask questions. Just put it on. And listen to me very carefully, child." Mrs. Choi stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Tonight, he is in a mood. The business in the city is going badly. Do not speak unless spoken to. Pour the wine from the right. And whatever you do, do not spill a drop. His patience is thin tonight." Nia dressed with shaking hands. The silk felt cool against her skin, slipping on like a second shadow. When she looked in the mirror, she didn't recognize herself. She looked elegant, expensive, and trapped. She followed Mrs. Choi down the stairs to the dining hall. The room was cavernous, lit only by tall candles that flickered in the draught. The table was long enough to seat 20 people, but only one place was set at the very head. Kang Joon-Woo sat there. He was wearing a black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing the dark ink that coiled around his forearms. He was reading a file, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him. "She is here, master," Mrs. Choi announced, bowing low. Joon-Woo didn't look up. He simply gestured with one hand. "Leave us." Mrs. Choi hesitated for a fraction of a second, looked at Nia with pity, and then hurried out, closing the heavy doors behind her. Nia was alone with the dragon. "Come here," he commanded softly. Nia walked toward him. The sound of her bare feet on the rug was swallowed by the silence. She stopped a few feet away. "Closer," he said. She took another step. She was close enough to smell him now, sandalwood and danger. "Pour," he said, tapping the empty wine glass. Nia reached for the decanter of red wine on the table. It was heavy crystal. Her wrist felt weak. As she lifted it, her hand trembled. The dark red liquid swirled dangerously close to the rim. You are shaking, Joon-Woo observed, his eyes still fixed on the file in front of him. Spill a drop on my table, Nia, and I will add a week to your contract. Nia bit her lip so hard she tasted copper. She used both hands to steady the decanter. Focus. Just pour. Don't breathe. She tilted the glass. The wine flowed smoothly, a dark ribbon of velvet filling the glass. She stopped exactly at the curve. Perfect. She set the decanter down and exhaled. Suddenly, his hand shot out. He grabbed her wrist, the same wrist he had bruised 2 nights ago. His grip was warm, firm, and possessive. He finally looked up from the file. His eyes were dark, burning with a strange intensity. Why are you here, Nia? He asked, his voice low. I'm working, she stammered, trying to pull her hand back, but he held fast. No, he corrected. Why are you in Korea? Why did a girl like you leave her home to come to this cold city? I wanted to study, she whispered. I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to build things. Joon-Woo laughed softly, a dry, humorless sound. He ran his thumb over the pulse point of her wrist, feeling her heart hammer against his skin. You wanted to build, he mused. And instead, you are here, cleaning up the messes of men like me. He pulled her closer, forcing her to lean down until their faces were level. Do you hate me, Nia? The question caught her off guard. She looked into his eyes, searching for a trap. I fear you. Good, he murmured, his gaze dropping to her lips. Hate is passionate. Hate is dangerous. But fear makes you careful. Fear keeps you safe. He released her wrist abruptly. Sit. He pointed to the chair to his right. Not a servant's place. A guest's place. Sir, I should stand. I said sit. Nia sat. She sat on the edge of the velvet chair, her back rigid. Tonight, you are not a maid, Joon-Woo said, picking up his wine glass. Tonight, you are my audience. I have had a very long day dealing with liars and thieves. I want to look at something honest. He took a sip of wine, his eyes never leaving her face. Nia felt like a butterfly pinned to a board. He was dissecting her. Consuming her. Just then, a loud commotion erupted from the front hallway. Shouting. The sound of a scuffle. And then, the heavy dining room doors banged open. Joon-Woo didn't flinch, but his eyes went cold. A young man strutted into the room. He was handsome in a chaotic, messy way, with bleached blonde hair and a flashy white suit that clashed with the dark elegance of the house. He had a scar running through his eyebrow and a grin that looked like trouble. This was Min-ho. The Viper. Brother. Min-ho shouted, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. Your guards are getting rude. They tried to stop me at the gate. Me. Your own flesh and blood. Joon-Woo set his glass down slowly. I told them to stop anyone who wasn't invited. You were not invited, Min-ho. Min-ho laughed, walking boldly toward the table. He grabbed an apple from the centerpiece and took a loud, crunchy bite. Then, he stopped. He saw Nia. His chewing slowed. His eyes widened, raking over her form in the black silk dress. He looked hungry, but in a cheap, vulgar way that made Nia's skin crawl. Min-ho whistled. Well, Min-ho sneered, walking around the table toward her. I didn't know you had a taste for foreign delicacies, Joon-Woo. Since when do you keep exotic pets? Nia shrank back in her chair. Min-ho reached out. His fingers, covered in flashy gold rings, moved to touch a stray curl of Nia's hair. Don't, Joon-Woo said. The voice was barely a whisper, but it stopped Min-ho's hand in mid-air. Joon-Woo stood up. He moved so fast Nia barely saw it. 1 second he was seated, the next, he was standing, radiating a dark, lethal energy that filled the room. "Touch her," Joon-Woo said, his voice dropping to a terrifying growl, "and you lose the hand." Min-ho froze. His hand was inches from Nia's hair. He looked at Joon-Woo, searching for a bluff in his brother's eyes. He found none. There was only the promise of violence. Min-ho laughed, but it was a nervous, jagged sound that cracked in the middle. He slowly lowered his hand, holding his palms up in a mock surrender. "Easy, brother," Min-ho said, backing away slowly, his shoes squeaking on the polished floor. "I didn't know she was personal property. I thought she was just staff." "She is under my protection," Joon-Woo said. He didn't sit back down. He remained standing, a wall of dark charcoal wool and suppressed rage. "And you are leaving now?" Min-ho sneered, adjusting the lapels of his flashy white suit. He looked at Nia one last time, a look of pure malice that promised he wouldn't forget her face. "Fine. But be careful, Joon-Woo. Exotic pets have a habit of biting. Or, getting stolen." He turned on his heel and strutted out, whistling a discordant tune. The heavy doors slammed shut behind him, sealing the room in silence once more. The silence that followed was deafening. It rang in Nia's ears louder than the shouting had. She was trembling. Her adrenaline was crashing, leaving her knees weak and her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. She looked at Joon-Woo, expecting him to calm down, to sit back down and drink his wine. Instead, he turned on her. He crossed the distance between them in 2 long, predatory strides. He didn't hit her. He slammed his hand against the wall right next to her head, trapping her between his body and the expensive wallpaper. Nia gasped, pressing her back against the wall, her eyes wide. Joon-Woo was breathing hard. His eyes were wild, the pupils blown wide, swallowing the iris. It wasn't anger at her, it was the aftershock of violence, the beast pacing inside the cage of his suit. He looked at her, his gaze dropping to the spot on her shoulder where Min-ho had almost touched her. "Did he touch you?" Joon-Woo demanded. His voice was rough, like gravel grinding on glass. "No," Nia whispered, her heart hammering against her ribs so hard she thought he must feel it. "You stopped him." "He looked at you," Joon-Woo muttered, more to himself than her. He reached out, his long fingers hovering over her face, shaking slightly with restrained energy. "He looked at you like you were meat." "I didn't do anything." Nia cried, tears finally welling up in her eyes. "I just stood there. I did exactly what you told me to do." "I know," Joon-Woo said. He leaned in, his forehead resting heavily against the wall next to hers. He closed his eyes, fighting for control. "That is the problem, Nia. You exist. And that is enough to start a war." He pulled back, his mask of cold indifference sliding back into place, though the heat in his eyes remained. He grabbed her hand, not gently, but not painfully. "Come with me." "Where?" Nia asked, stumbling as he pulled her toward the door. "To see the truth." He dragged her down the winding corridors of the mansion. They passed the kitchen, past the library, and stopped at a heavy steel door at the end of the hall. He punched in a code. The door hissed open. The room inside was dark, illuminated only by a wall of glowing blue monitors. It looked like a command center. Maps of Seoul, stock tickers, and dozens of security feeds flickered in the gloom. The air smelled of ozone and electricity. "You think I am the villain," Joon-Woo said, letting go of her hand and walking behind the massive glass desk. "You think I am keeping you here because I am cruel. Because I enjoy watching you suffer in a gilded cage." He typed a rapid command on his keyboard. One of the large monitors in the center of the wall flickered and changed. "Look at screen 4, he commanded. Nia looked. The screen resolved into a clear, live video feed. It showed a dusty, sun-drenched street. People were walking by in brightly colored clothes. In the center of the frame was a modest shop with a faded sign hanging above the door, Adeyemi Fabrics. Nia gasped, her hands flying to her mouth to stifle a scream. That's my father's shop. In Lagos. Look closer, Joon-Woo said, his voice void of emotion. Nia squinted at the screen. Standing across the street from the shop, leaning against a parked car, were two men. They stood out. They were wearing dark suits in the heat, smoking cigarettes, their eyes fixed unblinkingly on the shop door. Who are they? Nia asked, a cold horror creeping into her veins that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. They work for Minho, Joon-Woo said. The man who was just in my dining room. The man who looked at you with such hunger. Nia felt the room spin. She gripped the edge of the desk to keep from falling. Why? Why are they watching him? Because Minho isn't stupid. He knows I have a new guest, Joon-Woo said, walking around the desk to stand beside her. The blue light from the screens cast sharp shadows across his face, making him look like a statue carved from ice. He thinks you are my weakness. He has men watching your father, waiting for a signal. He turned to face her fully. If you leave this house, Nia, if you run, Minho will assume I have discarded you. He will assume you are no longer under my protection. He leaned down, his voice dropping to a whisper that sent shivers down her spine. And if you are not under my protection, those men will enter that shop. And your father will never sell another piece of fabric again. Nia grabbed Joon-Woo's lapels. She didn't think about the rules. She didn't think about the boundaries. She just grabbed him, bunching the expensive fabric of his shirt in her fists. Stop them. Tell them to leave him alone. Please. I cannot control Minho's men, Joon-Woo said calmly. He didn't push her away. Instead, he covered her trembling hands with his own large, warm ones. But I can control the narrative. As long as you are here, as long as you are mine, they will not touch him. They fear me too much to strike while you are in my house. He paused, letting the implication hang in the heavy air between them. So tell me, Nia, he said softly, his thumbs brushing over her knuckles. The gate is unlocked. If you want to leave, you can go. You can fly back to Nigeria tomorrow. I will not stop you. He looked up at the screen where her father was unlocking the shop door, completely oblivious to the killers watching him from across the street. Do you still want to quit? Nia looked at the screen. She looked at her father, small and fragile in the distance. Then she looked up at the dragon standing in the shadows, the man who held her life, and now her father's life, in his hands. She realized then that the cage wasn't just glass and steel. It was fear. And he held the only key. No, she whispered, her voice cracking. A single tear rolled down her cheek. I'll stay. Joon-Woo smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was a small, victorious thing, sharp as a blade. Good choice. I thought I knew the rules. Do not enter the West Wing. Do not look at him. But tonight, the storm broke all the rules. I found him alone. Shirtless. Vulnerable. For the first time, the dragon wasn't looking at me like a master looking at a servant. He was looking at me like a man, starving. He told me that dragons burn the world to protect their treasure. I didn't realize that I was the treasure. But just as his lips brushed mine, the lights died. And the monster returned. Lock the door behind me. Do not open it for anyone. The fortress has been breached. And tonight, the dragon goes to war. Earlier that day, the mansion was quiet. Too quiet. For 3 days, the silence had settled over the hallways like dust. Since the night in the dining room, since the wall slam and the revelation of the screens, Joon-Woo had been a phantom. Nia saw his car leave before dawn and return long after she had locked herself in her suite. But tonight, the storm kept her awake. Thunder rolled over the hills of Pyeongchang-dong, shaking the foundation of the house. Lightning flashed, illuminating her room in harsh, strobe-light bursts. Nia couldn't sleep. The image of her father on that screen, and the men watching him, played on a loop in her mind. She needed water. She needed to move. She slipped out of her room. The hallway was dark, the shadows stretching long and thin. She crept down the grand staircase, her bare feet silent on the marble. She was heading for the kitchen when she saw the light. It was spilling from the slightly ajar door of the library. A warm, flickering orange glow that danced against the dark wood of the floor. Nia stopped. She should go back. She knew the rules. Do not enter the master's private spaces. But curiosity was a dangerous pull. She stepped closer. She pushed the door open just an inch. Joon-Woo was there. He was sitting in a high-backed leather wingchair near the fireplace. A half-empty tumbler of whiskey sat on the small table beside him. And he was shirtless. Nia's breath hitched. She had seen him shirtless that first night, but that had been in chaos and darkness. Now, in the glow of the firelight, she saw him clearly. His back was a canvas of violence and art. The black ink of the dragon didn't just cover his arm, it sprawled across his shoulder blades, its scales detailed and sharp, its claws digging into his spine. It was terrifying. It was beautiful. He was holding a small jar of ointment, trying awkwardly to reach a spot high on his shoulder, right where the dragon's head roared against his neck. He winced, a hiss of pain escaping his lips. Nia didn't think. She just spoke. You're going to make it bleed if you stretch like that. Joon-Woo froze. He didn't cover himself. He didn't shout. He slowly lowered his hand and turned his head. The firelight cast half his face in shadow, making his eyes look like burning coals. You are awake, he said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. The storm, Nia whispered, stepping into the room. I couldn't sleep. Neither could I. He looked at the jar in his hand, then back at her. The silence stretched between them, heavy with the memory of the last time they were this close. The wall. The heat. It's fresh ink, he said, his voice low. The artist went over the old lines. It burns. Nia walked forward. She felt like she was walking into a lion's den, but her legs moved on their own. She stopped beside his chair. Let me, she said. She held out her hand. Joon-Woo hesitated. He looked at her small, dark hand, then at his own scarred, tattooed skin. He looked like he wanted to tell her to leave. He looked like he wanted to warn her that he was dangerous. Instead, he handed her the jar. Nia dipped her fingers into the cool, medicinal-smelling balm. She moved behind him. His skin was hot. Feverishly hot. She touched his shoulder. Joon-Woo's muscles tensed instantly, hard as rock under her fingertips. Relax, she whispered. Slowly, painfully, he exhaled. His shoulders dropped. Nia worked the ointment into the angry, red skin around the black ink. She traced the lines of the dragon. Up the spine. Over the shoulder blade. The contrast of her dark hand against his pale skin was stark, hypnotic. Why a dragon? She asked softly, her voice barely audible over the crackling fire. Joon-Woo stared into the flames. He didn't answer immediately. He took a sip of whiskey, the glass clinking against his teeth. In the myths, he said, his voice rumbling through his chest, vibrating against her fingers, dragons are not heroes. They are monsters. They burn villages. They steal gold. He turned his head slightly, trying to catch her eye. But they also protect, he murmured. Dragons hoard what they treasure, Nia. They wrap themselves around it. And they burn anyone who tries to touch it. Nia's hand stilled on his shoulder. The air in the room suddenly felt charged, electric. Is that what I am? She whispered. A treasure you hoarded? Joon-Woo reached up. He caught her hand, stopping her. He didn't crush her wrist this time. He laced his fingers through hers, pulling her around the chair until she was standing between his knees. He looked up at her. The arrogance was gone. There was only a raw, naked hunger. You are the only thing in this house that isn't cold, he said. He pulled her closer. Nia didn't resist. She felt the heat radiating off him, melting her fear. She looked at his lips. He looked at hers. Sir. Joon-Woo, he corrected roughly. Say my name. Joon-Woo. He leaned forward. His free hand came up to cup her jaw, his thumb brushing against her bottom lip. Nia closed her eyes, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The storm outside was forgotten. The danger was forgotten. There was only him. His lips brushed hers, a feather-light touch that promised ruin. Crash. The room plunged into darkness. The fire was the only light left, but even that seemed to dim as the hum of the electricity died. The music system cut out. The security lights outside blinked off. Joon-Woo pulled back instantly. The vulnerability vanished from his face, replaced by the mask of the dragon. He looked at the digital clock on the desk. Blank. He looked at the security panel on the wall. Dead. Stay here, he ordered, his voice icy. He stood up, grabbing a handgun from the drawer of the side table. He racked the slide. Joon-Woo. Nia whispered, fear rushing back in a cold tide. What happened? Is it the storm? No, Joon-Woo said, moving toward the door, his body moving with the lethal grace of a soldier. The generator should have kicked in instantly. This isn't the storm. He looked back at her one last time. Lock the door behind me. Do not open it for anyone but me. He slipped out into the darkness. Nia rushed to the door, fumbling with the lock. She clicked it shut. Then, she heard it. Glass shattering. Not a cup. Not a window. It sounded like a massive pane of glass exploding. And then, heavy boots running on the marble floor. Nia backed away from the library door, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She looked around for a weapon, a heavy book, a statue, anything. She grabbed a heavy brass letter opener from the desk, clutching it until her knuckles turned white. The door handle rattled. Violently. Open up, a muffled voice growled from the other side. It wasn't Joon-Woo. Nia didn't breathe. She stepped back into the shadows of the bookshelves. Crack. The wood around the lock splintered. A heavy boot kicked the door again. And again. With a final, sickening crunch, the door flew open. Two men stepped into the flickering firelight. They wore black tactical gear and ski masks. They didn't look like thieves. They looked like soldiers. Check the room, the first man commanded. The Viper wants her alive. Nia pressed herself against the cold wood of the shelf, praying to become invisible. But the room was small. The second man swept his flashlight across the darkness. The beam hit her face, blinding her. Got her, he grunted. He lunged. Nia swung the letter opener wildly. It scraped against the man's tactical vest, useless. He backhanded her, a sharp, stinging blow that sent her sprawling to the rug. Don't damage the goods, the first man warned, stepping forward to zip-tie her hands. Minho wants to play with her before he negotiates. The man reached down, grabbing Nia by her hair. She screamed, a raw sound of terror that echoed through the high ceilings. Bang! The man holding her hair didn't let go. He simply dissolved. His head snapped back, a spray of red mist erupting into the air, and he collapsed to the floor, dead weight on top of her. Nia scrambled backward, gasping for air, covered in blood that wasn't hers. Joon-Woo stood in the doorway. He was a nightmare brought to life. He was still shirtless, his pale skin now streaked with soot and sweat. The dragon tattoo on his chest seemed to heave with every breath. He held the gun with terrifying stability, smoke curling from the barrel. The second intruder raised his weapon. Joon-Woo didn't hesitate. He dropped the gun, empty, and crossed the room before the man could pull the trigger. It wasn't a fight. It was an execution. Joon-Woo tackled the man into the heavy oak desk. Bones cracked. The intruder drew a combat knife, slashing wildly. Joon-Woo! Nia screamed. The blade flashed in the firelight. It carved a deep, jagged line across Joon-Woo's forearm, but he didn't even flinch. He grabbed the man's wrist, twisting it with a sickening pop, and drove his elbow into the man's throat. The intruder crumpled to the floor and didn't move. Silence rushed back into the room, heavier than before. Joon-Woo stood over the body, his chest heaving. Blood was dripping from his arm, pooling on the expensive Persian rug. He looked wild, primal, terrifying. He turned slowly to look at Nia. For a second, she thought he didn't recognize her. His eyes were completely black, dilated with adrenaline and violence. Nia, he breathed, the name tearing out of his throat. He fell to his knees beside her. He didn't care about the blood. He didn't care about the bodies. He reached out with shaking hands, cupping her face, searching her for injuries. "Did they hurt you?" he demanded, his voice cracking. "Answer me." "I'm okay," Nia sobbed, grabbing his wrists. "I'm okay. But you're bleeding." "It doesn't matter," he whispered. He pulled her into his chest, burying his face in her neck. He held her so tight it hurt, rocking her slightly. "I was almost too late. I was almost too late." Nia could feel his heart beating against hers. It was racing, erratic. The dragon was trembling. The morning sun brought no warmth to the mansion. It only exposed the wreckage. The library was cordoned off. The bodies were gone, removed by cleanup crews that moved like ghosts. The broken glass was swept away. Nia sat in the dining room, staring at a cup of tea she hadn't touched. Her hands were clean now, scrubbed raw, but she could still feel the phantom sensation of blood on her skin. The doors opened. Joon-Woo walked in. He was dressed in a pristine black suit, buttoned up to his chin. His arm was in a sling. His hair was slicked back perfectly. The wild, vulnerable man from the night before was gone. The master was back. He didn't look at her. He walked to the head of the table and placed a thick manila envelope on the mahogany surface. "Eat," he said coldly. "You have a long flight." Nia stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "What?" Joon-Woo tapped the envelope. "Your passport. A plane ticket to Lagos departing at noon. And a cashier's check for 50 million won." He finally looked at her. His eyes were dead. Empty. "The debt is paid. The contract is void. You are leaving." "I don't want the money," Nia said, walking toward him. "And I'm not leaving. Not after last night. Especially after last night." Joon-Woo shouted. The mask slipped. For a second, the anguish broke through. "Look around you, Nia. Look at this house. It is not a home. It is a battlefield. Last night, Minho's men got inside. Next time, it will be a bomb. Next time, it will be a sniper." He stepped closer, towering over her, using his size to intimidate her, to push her away. "I told myself I could keep you. I told myself I could lock you in a tower and keep the monsters away. But I am the monster, Nia. And I almost got you killed." "You saved me," Nia argued, reaching for his good hand. He snatched it away as if her touch burned him. "I am the reason you needed saving," he hissed. He turned his back to her, looking out the window at the driveway. The black sedan was waiting. The engine was running. Go back to Nigeria, he said, his voice flat and final. Find a nice man who doesn't have blood under his fingernails. Build your buildings. Forget this place. Forget me. You don't mean that, Nia whispered. I do. He gripped the windowsill until his knuckles turned white. Get in the car, Nia. Or I will have the guards drag you into it. Nia stared at his back. She waited for him to turn around. She waited for him to look at her with that hunger, that possessiveness. But he didn't move. He stood like a stone statue, cold and unyielding. Tears pricked her eyes, hot and fast. She grabbed the envelope from the table. Fine, she said, her voice shaking. I'll go. But you are a coward, Joon-Woo. You are not a dragon. You are just a man afraid to be happy. She turned and ran. She ran out of the dining room, down the hall, and out the front door. She didn't look back. She got into the black sedan and slammed the door. The car pulled away, tires crunching on the gravel. Inside the dining room, Joon-Woo watched the car disappear down the winding hill. As soon as it vanished around the bend, his legs gave out. He sank to the floor, leaning his head against the wall, and closed his eyes. He had saved her life. But he had just destroyed his own. The black sedan wound its way down the Pyeongchang-dong hills. The city of Seoul sprawled out below, a sea of gray concrete and gray sky. Nia sat in the back seat, clutching the manila envelope. Inside was her freedom. The ticket to Lagos was first class. The check was enough to buy her father a new shop, a new house, a new life. It was everything she had prayed for in the beginning. She looked out the window. The rain had started again, tracing lonely paths down the glass. She closed her eyes and saw him. Not the monster the world saw. Not the master who barked orders. She saw the man sitting by the fire, in pain, letting her touch his scars. She saw the man who had thrown himself in front of a knife for her without hesitation. Dragons hoard what they treasure. He hadn't sent her away because he didn't want her. He had sent her away because he loved her too much to watch her bleed. Nia looked at the check again. It was just paper. Cold, dead paper. She looked at the driver's reflection in the rearview mirror. Stop the car, she said. The driver, a stoic man in a black suit, didn't look back. Mr. Kang's orders are to take you directly to Incheon Airport, Mississippi. I said stop the car. Nia shouted, her voice ringing with a newfound authority. The driver hesitated, then pulled over to the shoulder of the wet road. Nia didn't get out. She leaned forward, gripping the headrest. Take me back. The driver looked at her in the mirror, his eyes wide. Miss, if I take you back, the master will kill me. He was very clear. If you don't take me back, Nia said, her voice steady and hard, I will walk back up this hill in the rain. And when I get there, I will tell him you left me on the side of the road. The driver stared at her. He saw the fire in her eyes. He sighed, put the car in gear, and made a U-turn. The sun was setting by the time the car crunched back onto the gravel driveway. The mansion loomed against the purple sky, dark and silent. Nia got out. She didn't take her suitcase. She didn't take the envelope. She walked up the stone steps and pushed the heavy front doors open. They were unlocked. The house was silent. She walked to the dining hall. Joon-Woo was there. He was sitting at the head of the table, exactly where she had left him hours ago. The room was dark, unlit by candles or lamps. He was staring at the empty chair across from him, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He looked like a king ruling over a kingdom of ash. You missed your flight, he said. His voice was rough, devoid of emotion. He didn't turn around. I told the driver to make sure you got on that plane. He tried, Nia said, her voice echoing in the vast room. I made him turn around. Joon-Woo stood up slowly. He turned to face her. His face was a mask of exhaustion and anger. Why? He demanded. Are you stupid? Do you have a death wish? No, Nia said, walking closer. She stopped a few feet away from him. I have a life wish. There is no life here. Joon-Woo shouted, smashing his glass against the wall. Shards of crystal rained down on the floor. There is only blood. There is only danger. Minho is gone, but there will be another. And another. I cannot keep you safe, Nia. I didn't ask you to keep me safe, Nia shouted back. I asked you to let me stay. She took a breath, stepping over the broken glass. I told you the first night. I wanted to be an architect. Joon-Woo looked at her, confused by the change of subject. His chest was heaving. What does that matter now? Architects don't run away when the foundation shakes, Nia said, her voice softening. They reinforce it. They build something stronger. She reached out and took his hand. His good hand. It was trembling. I don't want a safe life in Lagos, Joon-Woo. I don't want a life where I wonder every day if you are alive or dead. I want to build a future. Here. With you. Joon-Woo stared at her. He looked at their joined hands. He looked at her face, searching for fear, searching for regret. He found only resolve. You are a fool, he whispered, his voice cracking. Maybe, Nia smiled, stepping into his space. But I'm your fool. The dam broke. Joon-Woo groaned, a sound of defeat and desperation. He reached out with his good arm and pulled her against him. He didn't crush her this time. He held her like she was made of glass, like she was the most precious thing in the world. He buried his face in her hair, inhaling sharply. I tried to let you go. I tried. I know, Nia whispered, wrapping her arms around his waist. But the gate was open. And I walked back in. He pulled back to look at her. The darkness in his eyes was gone, replaced by a fierce, burning light. Then the gate stays shut, he vowed. Clause 4. Nobody leaves. Nobody leaves, Nia agreed. He kissed her. It wasn't like the almost kiss in the library. It was deep, consuming, and final. It was a promise sealed in breath and skin. Outside, the sun finally broke through the clouds, casting a beam of golden light through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing around them. The cage was gone. The fortress was gone. It was just a home. And the dragon had finally found his heart.